so honored today to have Ron Kobayashi here with me. We're going to be on Zoom together. We're going to do an interview with Ron, and I'm going to introduce you first to him. Ron, and he's going to hate when I say this because I already told him I was doing it earlier. Ron is perhaps arguably the best jazz musician in Orange County, maybe Southern California. He has already won the Best Jazz at Orange County Music Awards. Him and his group have already won that, and they've been nominated several times. He's been playing jazz piano for 35 years here in Fullerton. Fullerton, you wouldn't think that, but he'll talk a little bit about that as well. He's worked with some legendary people, you guys, and these names may not make a lot of sense to you, but they are legendary. He's worked with Kenny Burrell. He's a jazz guitarist, megastar. Tom Scott is an alto and tenor sax player. He was with a group called the LA Express way back in the day, but Tom Scott was booked every day for like 5 years. He was the most heavily booked sax player in LA. So he's played with him. He played with a rock star named Peter Frampton, and he's played with guitarist, another jazz guitar player, Peter White, and the legendary, this guy's kind of like Frank Sinatra, the legendary Mel Torme, right? So he's really played with a lot of cool people. That's just to name a few. I couldn't fit them all on my page. He's also the musical director, and the musical director is somebody who puts all the music together for the Hollywood Diversity Awards. So let's go and talk to him.
So when did you start playing music? And tell me about your Parks Junior High days.
Well, they kind of go hand in hand. My first time really playing serious music was for the Parks Junior High choir. I was the accompanist.
Wow.
We did a ton of shows. I don't know if you still do it, but there's a outdoor amphitheater.
Oh,
you
yeah.
still have that? Okay.
Oh, we still have it, yeah.
We did the shows right out there in the amphitheater, and so that was my first experience at not only playing piano, but playing piano in a group with other performers under a director, having to rehearse and do my part to contribute musically to the whole, to that entity, the choir.
Right.
And it was a great experience for me because there's so much I learned from that. Now I have a trio and I play in bands many times. I play with vocalists. In fact, my main gig is working with vocalists. So that was probably the best training I could have ever had, jumping in junior high and doing what I'm doing now. Yeah, I owe a lot of it to Parks.
That's really, really cool. That's really cool. Now, I think I read somewhere that your dad was a jazz musician.
Yeah. My dad used to play saxophone. They're from both my mom and dad are in Hawaii. My dad just passed. But my dad, thank you. My dad played saxophone, and so he really passed on his love of jazz to me. And when I was young, and when I was going to Parks, he would be playing jazz, Count Basie and Harry James and all the big bands for me. And I was able to really hear what the jazz sound was supposed to be like. So yeah, really, really fortunate that both my parents were very supportive of my jazz endeavors, but also really influenced me in terms of showing me the way. That's
really good. Yeah, I think when you're immersed in that kind of situation, where your parents are listening to the music, your parents are playing the music, it's like, yeah, I got to do that. I got to learn that. That's cool. I can do that. I just think a lot of times parents, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, they kind of hide their talents. They could be great at something, and if they show their kids, just show your kids. Bring your kids into it. Most of the time that's really great, and you're formulating memories that kids have for a long time. So one of the other things is I know you love Fullerton. And you love Southern California because you're still here. But Fullerton's got a huge, rich, just a rich name of bands that have come from here. We got the Cold War Kids and Social Distortion, Gwen Stefani.
Right.
I think Jackson Browne even went to Sunny Hills.
He went to Sunny Hills.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't think he's proud of that fact, but I think he went there. And I know we have like Olds, the Olds trumpet manufacturer that were here. By the way, I was going to tell you the story too. When I was a kid in high school, I wanted to work for Olds. I thought that'd be a great job. So I went down and applied, and I got the job on the trumpet assembly line. And so
Wow.
I had to interview, right? So I go down there the first day and I sign my W-2, and the foreman looks at me and he's like, "Yeah, you can't have the job." I said, "What do you mean? I'm here." I think I was probably maybe in college. And he said, you're left-handed. It's assembly line work. You'd be on the wrong side of the bench.
Oh.
And I'm like,
oh man.
I know. Don't you have another job? Can't I test the trumpets? Come on.
Yeah, geez.
Let me do something. So that was my story about that. So I was really light. I think I ended up working at Zodi's after that or something. It was a letdown, whatever it was. So, and I asked you earlier if you knew any of the Fenders, Leo or Phyllis Fender, and you said, "Yeah, I know you know them through the Fullerton Museum." So
Absolutely, yeah.
So I want to tell you this quick because my kids don't know this story either. But Phyllis, I co-direct a choir with Elroy Panko over at Wilshire Avenue, church in downtown Fullerton. And Phyllis is one of our congregants. She's also a soprano in my choir. So she comes trucking down, and she's like the beam of light in the choir. And she's right in front, right? Every time I'm directing, she's staring at me with this giant smile, like I'm her long lost child or something. It's very, very, it's very heartwarming. So she says, "Let's have the Christmas party for the choir at my house in Fullerton at the Fender house." I'm like, I love that. So we go up there. She does a great job. The house is all decorated, and she grabs my arm. She's little. She grabs my arm. "Doug, come here. I want to show you something." So she pulls me into the living room, and she goes, Do you like my grand piano?" And it was brown and ornate. It was a beautiful grand piano. I said, "Yeah, it's beautiful." And she goes, "When Leo bought me this house, I told him, Leo, the only thing this house needs is a grand piano." And he said, "Do you know who you're talking to? I'm Leo Fender. I invented the Fender Rhodes. That's my." And she said, "I'm not having that ugly box in my house."
Oh man.
And she turned to me and she goes, "Aren't I right in saying that?" And I said, "Don't get me involved." And so the next morning she got up and she told me she went down to the piano superstore and she bought that piano, and she said, "You deliver and set up, right?" And the guy said, "Yeah." And she said, "It's never moved from that. 3 days later it arrived. It's never moved. Leo always was so mad at me for this piano."
Oh my goodness. Wow.
It was great.
Oh, that's a great story. Wow.
It was wonderful. So back to my thing. So you stuck around Southern California. Why are you still here? Why didn't you go to Nashville or New York or Chicago or something like that?
I absolutely love Fullerton. I love everything about it. My parents still live there. They've lived there for, 60 years or whatever it's been, 50 some years. And I love it because of all my friends still live in Fullerton, and I just love all the variety of things to do in Fullerton. There's the downtown. You can go up to the hills, not too far from the beach, right? Yeah. There's so many things to do. We have great parks. We have great schools. And it's just a wonderful place to live. And and I love the weather. So there's never been a reason to leave. And fortunately, I have to say, because I've been playing around this area for now almost 35 years, I'm able to make a living, at it, only doing music and nothing else. And a lot of it, I think I owe to just being here this long. Right. And so my name gets around, and then, when people need music, they'll call me, and it's only because I've just been around for so long.
There's a couple of other things. That you're a monster player, and that you love playing, and people love watching you. So those are other little reasons why you might still be working and being successful. I tell my students about the evolution of jazz. We talked about how it goes through New Orleans in the late 1800s. Yeah. And then it scoots up to Chicago, up to the 20s, and then all of a sudden, Europe, and it's everywhere, right? And even into World War II and beyond. So one of the areas that we talked about with the kids are bebop, and I'm like, I love this. I love this style. I know you love this style. We got these monster people like Coleman Hawkins and Coltrane and Dizzy and Miles, all those guys that are just like legends. They'll always be legends, right? So, but what do you love about playing that style of music? I know you do, because I see the smile on your face when you're playing. So what do you love about that?
What I love about it is that Bebop especially is a really high level of jazz. The harmony, rhythm, and melodies all went from the swing era up to this really high level. So it's a really great challenge, because professional jazz musicians that are playing today even are having being challenged by having to play these tunes and play them at the tempos that they play them, with the harmonies that they play them. So it's just a great challenge. I know I'm never going to get to the level I want to be there, but it's just a great thing to strive to try to be at. So I love the challenge of it, and I just love the fact that jazz in general is an improvisatory art form, so that if I play a solo and people applaud, I know they're applauding me because I just made up a melody over a chord progression that hopefully they enjoy. And nothing against classical. My second love is classical, and I grew up, I played 10, 12 years of classical piano. But a lot of times if you're playing a Bach invention or something, you're playing the notes that Bach wrote many, many years ago. And yes, there's interpretation, but you're nevertheless playing the notes of a composer many years ago. But when you're playing jazz, you're literally playing something in the moment that people are hearing for the first time and the last time. It's a one-off, right? It's the only time it's going to be played like that. So I just really enjoy that. I think it's just a very cool thing, and which is why I love jazz so much.
That's funny you would say that about bebop. Is tough. I mean, right now, you see a guy, when I ever see a kid like a high schooler and he's playing, a Clifford Brown transcription, I'm like, dude, man, that's wild, because you just don't, they're these guys that he is just regurgitating what somebody came out, and played. I mean,
right.
Sometimes it's mind-boggling, and even to be able to take that transcription and play it at that level is great. And you're right, there's a lot of players that are out there that they can't do it, and it's tough. It's tough work.
It is.
So reharmonization is kind of the key of jazz, no matter what style, really. Even when you go back to swing, a lot of that people were loving it because they're hearing these chord changes and this is wild. I never heard it before, right?
Right.
And I think that's still play. It's still in play today. I think people, I love watching people's reaction. If you ever go on, I'm talking to my kids now. If you ever go on and you watch somebody's reaction to a song they've never heard before. My wife and I just watched somebody's last night, and it's really great because they're going, they'll stop the music and they'll say, oh, I love what he's doing. Or I thought it would go this way. And they may not even use musical terms to say what they're saying, which is, I love the harmony. I love how it's being reharmonized.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So tell me about that in regards to jazz. How does that really work?
So there's certain rules, harmonic rules. But what we're given the freedom to do is, as you so well stated, provide like substitute harmonies for something, so that you might hear a melody and think that this is the original pathway for the harmony, right? It goes from here to here. And then the jazz musician might put in these extra chords that give it just a little extra spice. And so that's part of the improvisatory art too, is to like put in these chords that don't necessarily exist perhaps on the original music. Can I try something? I don't know if it's going to come through with Zoom. I hope you can hear this. My Zoom is not the best. But for instance, like the Christmas song, right? So, right? If you're thinking about a jazz musician might go. Hear all those chords between there? Or they might do this. Here's another way. Yeah. So you have a simple melody like that with a simple chord progression, and then the jazz musician put in these other chords underneath, and you listen and go, wow, that's like a detour, right?
That's cool.
Harmonically. Cool. And those are the kind of cool things that jazz musicians get to do, and they're given freedom to do that.
That's cool. That's really cool. And I hope that you guys, I can hear it. I hope that they can hear it as well when they get a chance to. I'll probably bump that up in the mix a little bit. That was great. I think it's, we think of it as a circle, right? I do at least. And I think, we can play within the circle, but I think it really gets fun. Sometimes jazz artists will be way out of the circle. Yeah. And you're like, oh, that's not going to work. That's not going to come back. And then all of a sudden it comes back home and you're like, wow. And the other thing I noticed about your group is you've been playing together so long that you know when not to step on each other,
Oh,
and you can really hear, like, the drummer's letting you do your thing, and you can hear, even though it's not a solo break, but you can hear that he's allowing you to shine through, or you're allowing him to shine through, which is, only comes with playing, I think.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
And my trio's been together 28 years. So part of the beauty of that is that we know each other's musical, makeup so well that we can kind of do that and coexist as a group, and really, like you said, kind of give the other person a chance to shine, and then lay back a little bit and come up when it's our chance. And things like that only happen when you play together a long time and you can kind of read each other's minds.
Yeah. To COVID, which has changed everything a lot, right? Parks, we would be doing 10 concerts all around Christmas. And we're not like a regular, I don't want to boast about my kids, but we're not like a regular junior high. These kids are invited everywhere, and we were invited to the state capitol for the governor. We were invited all over, right? It's such a great experience. So the kids are like, why are we playing so much? Are you kidding me? Because that's your responsibility, right? Your responsibility as a musician isn't to sit and play in your house.
Right.
So, tell me about how you feel about that. I mean, I know you teach, so what do you tell your students? And they're older than my students, but
yeah. Performance is everything. This is the reason why we practice. This is the reason why we learn the notes on the piano to begin with. It's not necessarily, and some people I guess may do this, to just play for yourself at home, but it's to give your art, your creativity to others. I think that's the greatest thing about music, is that sharing. And the only way you share it is by performing in public and letting the audience hear it. And I don't know how many times I've heard, and this brings such joy to my heart when I hear I'm out there playing, and at half the time maybe people aren't listening, but then somebody comes up and says, I was listening to what you were playing. It made my night. It brought back memories of, I don't know, my childhood, or some people say my husband brings back memories, or just says, I love that tune. That brought me so much joy to hear you play that tune. That is when I think as musicians, we really feel a sense of accomplishment, because we've now taken this art and we've now communicated it to another human being, even if it's one other person, and they've taken from that and it's brought them joy in their life. And there's nothing greater than that. There's no.
I'm so glad you said it, because that's exactly right. I mean, I tell the kids, especially around this time of the year, we went to Emerald Court assisted living facility.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, place is packed. I mean, there's people just packed like pickles in there, ready to hear these kids. And I'm like, you got to understand, this is maybe the only time in the whole season, if not the whole year, they're hearing live music.
Right.
And they're hearing it done well. So it's really, really important that not only do we play, but we put our instruments down and we walk out and we shake their hands, we talk to them. Because they don't see kids. They want to know, how do we get kids like this coming to, to play for us? And it's a great thing, It's just
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think you and I are on the same wavelength on that one. It's good. Can't hide your light under a bushel. You gotta play it.
Right.
All right. Any other words of encouragement from my kids?
Just only to please keep at it. I know music in general is not an easy task. I mean, that's why not everybody does it, because it's not easy. But if you can accomplish something through it, whether you do it professionally after you leave school or you don't, you are giving to the world. You really are. You're bringing light to the world, and it's the most wonderful thing you can do. And like I said, even if you don't, and you have the appreciation for music later, just the fact that you are learning it now in school, and you can pass your love on to your kids and their kids, is just the value is just immeasurable. So please stick to it. and you will reap the benefits. I guarantee you.
Well, speaking of sharing your gifts, on behalf of Fullerton School District and Parks, thank you for sharing time with us and sharing your gift with us. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Doug. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.